So, today we are going to be getting into real heady stuff. The subject of theology. Sounds like something you take going to university or college, doesn't it? So I thought I'd begin with this question. What if we didn't study it at all? I mean, who cares? Who cares about theology? Doesn't it sound boring? Before we address that, I want to point out this. My son is in school in New York, and one weekend he and his wife went over to visit this church. It's the Riverside Church in New York. It's a Baptist church. It's been there since at least the middle of the 1800s, and it's a landmark. And so they thought, let's go check this place out. So they're walking around, and one of the things they are impressed by is the stained glass window. That's Gutenberg, and this is the printing press. What the church did in the very beginning, back in the 1850s, is they commemorated the first printing press that printed the first Bible. And if you were here for our first couple classes, you know that that is what brought about a revolution in the free people of the world. As they walk around the church, they see a bulletin board. Can you recognize that figure? It's Che Guevara. Now, Che Guevara is a pretty hip guy to a lot of young folks. You see these shirts all the time with young people wearing this Che Guevara shirt. And they just think he's really cool. He was a revolutionary guy, you know, and everybody wants to be revolutionary when they're young. But here's a quote of his. Hatred is an element of struggle. Unbending hatred for the enemy, which pushes a human being beyond his natural limitations, making him into an effective, violent, selective, and cold-blooded killing machine. This is what our soldiers must become. He was cold-blooded. He was a murderer of thousands of people. What's he doing on a bulletin board in a church? That is what happens when you don't define your terms, when you don't really know what you believe in, and that is theology. Now, once again, our key verse, and we're going to continue to harp this point home because in this day and age, I believe this verse is really applicable to us. Because what we are fighting, we're fighting ideas. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, they're not worldly, but they are mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. A stronghold is an idea, a bad idea that you buy into that ends up shackling you, chaining you down, and you lose your freedom because you bought that idea. Casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. We cast down ideas, bad ideas. That's what we're called to do. Here's some bad ideas. Bad ideas that come against the knowledge of God. But note this, every one of these has a penalty. It's just part of God's laws. He set laws in the universe so that we have order. What happens if we don't have law? Chaos, right? So God has to have laws. He has to have moral laws for the same reason, to protect you, to bless you. But on the other hand, there has to be a consequence. And so every one of these has a consequence. Abortion. Abortion is a bad idea. I mean, obviously in abortion, the child pays a penalty, but also does the mother. Evolution is a scientific fact. That's a bad idea. It's got terrible consequences. Same-sex marriage, same thing, that it's a natural right. That's a bad idea. Man is essentially good. Another bad idea. The result, because of all these bad ideas, and we're just naming a few of them, is that there's a huge need for the truth. We need to know how to speak the truth in all kinds of different ways. Open up our vocabulary to be able to engage the people in the world. And that's the point of what we're doing here. These are the four things that we're going to touch today. First is, how can we know there is a God? Christians need to be able to answer this. How can we know there's a God? Second, how can we know God? And third, what is God like? What is his characteristics? And then the fourth thing we're going to address in the second half of this is, how does the Christian God compare to all the other gods? First question, how do we know there's a God? We have three arguments, real simple. The cosmological argument, or the argument from the universe. And it basically says that everything has a beginning. Therefore, there must be a beginner. Real simple. Scientists of Einstein's day, like Nobel Prize winner Arthur Compton, he said, "For myself, faith begins with the realization that a supreme intelligence brought the universe into being and created man. It is not difficult for me to have this faith, for it is incontrovertible that where there is a plan, there is intelligence. An orderly, unfolding universe testifies to the truth of the most majestic statement ever uttered. In the beginning, God." Now let's look at the other major religions. We've got quite a faith, folks, but you ain't seen nothing until you see what compares and contrasts with it. Let's just look at what they believe. Remember, 2 Corinthians 10:4 and 5, we battle ideas. These are ideas, and they're bad ideas, as you will see. So let's start with humanism. Humanism is the religion of our government at this point in time. It's the religion of our school system. It's the religion of the major media. That is their religion. Let's look at what they believe. Humanist Manifesto, first one was written in 1933, and it's basically, this is their statement of faith. This is what they believe. It begins like this. Religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and non-created. In other words, they took everything from Darwinism. Darwinism become so strong they believed now in Darwinism, which says that there is no God. Now, notice this though. Notice that they call themselves religious